The San Antonio Spurs are about to become one of the most dangerous teams in the entire NBA playoffs. And if people aren't paying attention yet, they're going to find out the hard way when it's already too late. Because this isn't just a young team anymore. This isn't just potential or future promise. This is a team that has already started turning the corner into something real. Something built for playoff basketball. Something that can seriously shake up the Western Conference. And it all starts with the foundation of everything, Victor Wembanyama. Wembanyama is not just developing into a star. He's developing into a matchup nightmare that the league has no clean answer for. At his size, his mobility, his defensive instincts, and now he's improving offensive skill set. He is the type of player that completely changes how teams have to game plan. In a playoff series, that matters even more. Because in the playoffs, teams don't just face you once and move on. They adjust, they study, they try to take away your strengths. But what do you take away from a player like Wembanyama? You can't stop him at the rim because of his length. You can't shoot over him consistently. You can't ignore him on offense because he's becoming more comfortable scoring in isolation, in the post, and even stepping out to shoot. And if you double him, you're leaving shooters open. That alone changes the entire structure of a defense. But the Spurs aren't just a one-player story anymore. This roster is starting to form real chemistry, real identity, and more importantly, real depth. That's what makes playoff teams dangerous. Not just stars, but structure. The Spurs system under their coaching development has been focused on ball movement, spacing, and creating decision makers instead of just scorers. That matters in the playoffs because when games slow down, teams that rely on isolation heavy offense often struggle. But teams that can move the ball, swing it side to side, and punish mistakes, those teams survive. And the Spurs are building exactly that kind of system. You're seeing guards who are more confident running the offense, wings who are starting to understand spacing at an elite level, and bigs who aren't just rim runners but actually play connectors. That kind of basketball is what wins playoff series when pressure rises. Because in the playoffs, every possession becomes heavier. Every mistake gets punished. Every defensive breakdown turns into a run. And the Spurs are becoming one of the few young teams that actually has the patience and discipline to handle that kind of pressure. Now let's talk about the defensive side, because that's where things get scary. With Wembanyama anchoring the paint and the Defensive Player of the Year, the Spurs have one of the most flexible defensive systems in the league. They can switch, they can protect the rim, they can recover faster than most teams because of his reach alone. That forces opposing offenses into uncomfortable shots. Not just contested shots, but rush shots. And in playoff basketball, forcing even a slight drop in efficiency can swing an entire series. But it's not just him either. The perimeter defense is starting to catch up. Young guards are getting stronger, more disciplined, and more aware of team defensive schemes. That means fewer breakdowns, fewer easy drives, and more controlled possessions. And when you combine that with a generational rim protector behind them, you get something that dangerous, a defense that can actually hold up in a 7-game series. Now here's what most people still underestimate the Spurs. They think young team means inconsistent team. But the 2025-26 San Antonio Spurs are not playing like a team learning how to survive. They're playing like a team learning how to win. That's a difference. Survival teams rely on talent spikes. Winning teams rely on structure. And in the playoffs, structure beats chaos more often than not. The Spurs are starting to build offensive identity around spacing and timing instead of just raw athleticism. That means fewer wasted possessions. That means fewer scoring droughts. That means when games tighten up in the fourth quarter, they're not panicking. And that's where playoff series are really decided. Because it's not about who has the best highlight plays, it's about who can execute when every possession feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds. Another reason the Spurs are dangerous is that they're unpredictable. Most teams in the playoffs can be categorized. You know who relies on isolation. You know who relies on heavy pick and roll. You know who lives and dies by the three-point shooting. But the Spurs are becoming harder to label. They can play through the post. They can run guard heavy pick and roll. They can space the floor and attack mismatches. They can switch defensively or sit in zone looks depending on the matchup. That unpredictability is a nightmare in a playoff series because game planning becomes harder every single night. And there's another factor people don't talk about enough: development speed. Young teams usually improve over years, but when you have a generational talent accelerating everything, the timeline gets compressed. Players grow faster, systems evolve faster, chemistry builds faster. That's what's happening in San Antonio right now. They're not waiting for a future window, they're actively stepping into one. Now let's talk about how they actually match up against elite Western Conference teams. Against teams that rely heavily on perimeter scoring, Spurs have the size and defensive versatility to disrupt rhythm. Against teams that rely on big physical centers, Wembanyama flips the matchup entirely by being a defensive anchor who can also stretch the floor. Against fast-paced teams, the Spurs can slow the game down and control tempo. Against slow-paced teams, they can inject energy and run in transition when needed. That kind of adaptability is what makes playoff underdogs turn into playoff threats. Because it's not just about having talent, it's about being able to change styles mid-series and still compete. And here's the real warning for the league. Once a young team learns how to win one playoff series, everything changes. Confidence compounds, experience stacks, pressure drops, and suddenly, a team that was supposed to be a year away becomes a team nobody wants to face in a 7-game series. The Spurs are heading directly towards that moment. And now they're in the playoffs, fully healthy, fully developed, and with their core playing with confidence, they are absolutely capable of pulling off major upsets, like against the Thunder. Because playoff basketball is not just about being the best team on paper. It's about matchups, adjustments, and who can survive the mental grind of a long series. And San Antonio is building a team that is designed for exactly that environment. They have size, they have defensive identity, they have emerging offenses structured, they have flexibility, and most importantly, they have a centerpiece player who changes every game plan the moment he steps on the floor. That combination is what makes teams dangerous. Not just good, not just promising, dangerous. And now that the playoffs have officially arrived and the Spurs are up 3-1 as of the time I'm recording this video, Spurs are going to be one of those teams that no one wants to see because they're the type of team that can turn a favorite into an early exit. And if they get hot at the right time, if the chemistry clicks, if the young core plays without fear, then the league might be forced to deal with something a lot sooner than expected. A Spurs team that isn't just building for the future anymore, but a Spurs team that is ready to take games away from anyone. Can the Spurs beat the Thunder when it comes down to it? Can the Spurs beat the Lakers when it comes down to it? Will the Nuggets even come back down 3-1? Can the Spurs beat top contending teams in the West? We'll find out during this entire playoff run, because these playoffs are going to get interesting. Let me know what other NBA teams or NBA players you guys want to hear me talk about next. And let me know what you guys think. Are the San Antonio Spurs going to the NBA Finals? Are they getting stopped by the OKC Thunder, the defending champs? if they make it to the finals? Can they beat the top contenders in the East? Let me know what you guys think in the comments.